had no idea what I was going to do, really. I really didn't, but I just started to write, and that's how I do things. So you begin to be able to see what your writing is all about. And of course, it's all about discovering one's own voice.
When I was 5, I lived with my mother and father and older brother.
At least I could draw, I told myself.
It was just me, my cats, and my imagination.
Created protective cover, just enough where he could keep his underwear on. Okay, everybody, today we have Jan Thorpe, my writing colleague in our writers group for creative fiction. And we're going to showcase some of her work today. So I'm going to start with her author's bio. Born in Pennsylvania and raised in California, Jan Thorpe grew up on the grounds of a hospital. Her father was a medical director, and she and her brother had the run of the place. People would say, "There goes Doc's kids on their bikes." On their vacations with their father, an avid fly fisherman, they camped throughout the Western Sierras, cooking trout over a campfire next to rivers and lakes. Jan's mother, while braiding her hair, told her about a flea named Skeenix that bothered everyone, an early influence that inspired her to make up her own stories. In childhood, Jan was a contradiction to most of the adults, too dreamy and a bit wild. She graduated from Vassar College with a degree in English literature, then married Larry Thorpe, living on a small lake where they spent summers. Living in the San Francisco Bay area. They bought a cabin at 7,400 feet on a small lake where they spent summers with their 2 sons and many beloved dogs. After 10 years of creating limited edition serigraphs, Jan found her way to earning a master's degree and later PhD in clinical psychology. In her Jungarian-oriented psychotherapy practice, specializing in dreams, 15 years ago, she began to write novels that weave the strange and elusive dimension of dreams into her psychological thrillers. After her first novel entitled Ancestors, she has written 4 more novels using the same 6 characters that include a pair of Chow sisters named Uno and Dido, or the Queens. This series is entitled Eye of the Dream series. While she has spent plenty of time in the classroom with her graduate studies and training, Jan still considers herself to be self-educated. In other words, I learned everything the hard way because I must know things out of my own experience rather than being lectured or told. That way is not for everyone, but especially with writing, I found my writing voice through my tendency to rebel, make lots of mistakes, and most of all, follow my own path with words that fly out of my brain wherever they might lead. That's a great bio, Jan. And
thank you.
I have had the honor of reading Ancestors, and it's a fantastic book. It has a lot of wonderful themes in it. Suspense thriller, about atonement, about following your own grain, about believing in your ancestry, and following some of your DNA makeup. So, Jan, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the writing, which was, has sort of been my last career, if you will. And, about, 15 years ago, I was met up with a friend from high school. I went to a little high school. It was a private boarding school in Ojai, and it was, co-ed. Anyway, Raymond and I, he was someone from my high school. We decided we were going to start a writing group together, and that we would do sort of memoir writing. And so we were meeting on a weekly basis, and a couple more joined us. And then within a year, we sort of broke off into 2 groups. So I had the boy group, which was Raymond and the other gentleman, and then the girls and I. But we were boys and girls. Okay. I announced to the guys, I'm going to write a thriller that has some depth. And I had no idea what I was going to do, really. I really didn't, but I just started to write, and that's how I do things. And that's sort of why I was bringing up the silk screen screening that I did early on, way back in the 80s, 70s and 80s, because I taught myself. And writing really, I have taught myself. Now, as a clinician, I did not teach myself in the beginning because there was a lot of classwork and a lot of training. But basically, everything I do is self-taught. And that's an important part of what my creative process is. So I started writing ancestors, and it took me a long time, many years. I would say from, let's see, I think it was around 2007 to 2014 that I was writing ancestors, a little bit at a time. And I had finished the first draft, and Val, you'll appreciate this. You know, you finish the first draft, you think you're done. And you're only beginning, because I I realized through, feedback and so, oh, I guess I need an editor. And it took me 4 editors until I met Carol Burbank, who is also editor of Val, and I share the same editor, and that's how we got to know each other in Carol's writing group. So, which I have been in for a couple of years now.
Mhm.
But anyway, so Ancestors, with Carol, I think I spent a year rewriting it. So that just, again, learning by making all the mistakes and realizing, as I'm writing, I'm getting better and better. So you begin to be able to see what your writing is all about. And of course, it's all about discovering one's own voice. And that was coming to me, and Ancestors was really the book where I did find what I'm interested in. And I did a lot of research for Ancestors, because some of the characters I was creating were, one of my main characters is a woman who's lived here in the United States for 10 years, but she's Nigerian. And so there was a lot of research to be done on that. She was one of the main characters, and her husband, also a Nigerian character, and their child. So, there was a lot to do. And I also got very interested in voodoo, which is very serious, I don't even call it a religion, but it's a cosmology. It's a way of life. And one of the first quotes I think I have in the book is that, this voodoo is in the African soul. I mean, in other words, and ancestors, the whole idea of ancestors, if you forget the ancestor, you forget yourself. And so, it really became an interesting part of the book. And I did create an altar that I kept up for a year as I was writing it. And I would sort of, interplay with the altar, just to get a feel for what it was doing. So anyway, I've now, out of Ancestors, there were 6 characters, 2 of them dogs. And I decided I'm just going to keep writing a series, because all my beta readers really liked those main characters. And I wanted to keep going with them, because once you create these characters, as far as the writer is a writer, they live. They're out there. And so I wanted to continue. So I have 5 books. The 4th one I'm still editing. That will be out. We're hoping to get it out end of April. And then I have a 5th book that I already have the manuscript for, and I'll be doing that editing right after.
Oh, that's
So anyway,
amazing.
that's where the writing of the books is at.
Very cool.
I think we
Can you
might
tell us a little bit about your altar here?
Yeah.
Well, each piece on the altar, one of the things that the Mami Wata is a water spirit. And so there were a lot of, I had a lot of the mask in there, is whether it's Mami Wata or not, they're always, it's a Yoruba mask, the one up on the wall. And I use that mask in the book. It's an important symbol in the book. And a lot of the statues you see there are one I made of Mommy Wata. It's sort of hard to see her, but she's in there. And, she always has the snakes draped around her and so forth. And, and on an altar, she loved beautiful things and jewelry and sparkly things. And then the rocks and the shells, all of it just sort of represent her. And then, and with altars, you just kind of play around with them. That's what I learned. You just sort of
Make it your own.
yeah, you just it's like it has to be alive. I mean, that's the whole idea of all of these places. They are alive things that have a soul to them. The rocks and the shells and everything actually have not just meaning, but they really are alive. And that's the interesting part of voodoo in general, is that it's a living spirit, and that nature is inside everything in nature, trees, rocks, shells, everything has a living spirit. And that really, I like that idea. That really, for some reason, it resonated. So I really, and the whole, the Mami Wata, I don't know what to call it. The whole, they're all over. People who are followers of her are all over the world. It's very inclusive. And that part I like too, because I felt like, okay, I can do this and not feel kind of silly. I really loved it. And the ship is a big symbol to her because she crosses the oceans. She crosses the water and lives in the water and outside the water. She's a shapeshifter, and cunning and quite cruel when you cross her, but also she will take care of you if you honor her and respect her.
What a great way to immerse yourself, in the
Yeah.
culture and
Yeah.
the entire experience. Very cool.
Yeah.
It's like paying homage. I feel that for, as a writer myself, Jan, you really, really have to go into the headspace of these characters. And of course, they have an identity and personality of their own, but of course, you're back there pulling the strings a little bit with your own experiences, and everything like that. And what I love about Ancestors is the symbolism that you have in there for so many things. And, and how, the most purest way to live is the way that you should be, and not go against your grain, and not go, try to hurt people, that you're trying to live your best life. And it has a lot of, as far as I'm concerned too, Eastern philosophy, in it too. And so it hits on a lot of different things. And I love your symbolism. And I love that you are that dedicated. I'm the same way, that you have a shrine,
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Well, I had also gone down to Los Angeles. On the UCLA campus, there is a museum. Well, it's for ethic. God, what's the word I want? At the time they were doing a show on Mami Wata, and so they were doing all sorts of altars, and some of them were just,
Go back to it.
amazing. They were just amazing. And that really gave me the idea that, oh yeah, I can do that too. I'm going to do one too. And so that's how it kind of came about. And it really helped, as you say, Val, to get into the headspace of my main character, who is Marimi Ashanti, and who's a troubled soul, because she's displaced from her home country. And and there's a whole plot around what's happened, and how she had to leave Nigeria, and she's here in the US, but she's never really felt comfortable here, and it's sort of part of the plot, how it all plays out. But anyway,
we should mention that Karen did the book cover.
Yes.
So talk about, Jan, what do you think? Maybe Karen, talk about that for a second. Karen, why don't you tell us about the book cover?
The jar. And the
Well, yeah. I wanted it. I knew I wanted a big thing, and then I I knew I wanted some texture around the thing so we could put in little hidden, I knew there were going to be hidden little things, little symbols we could put in there. And that's pretty much what we've done, you know, and it's kind of like I had this idea and instead of second guessing it, we just went with it. And so
Yeah, we did.
yeah, each book this one is the seaweed, another one has flames, another one's going to have water. So
Mhm.
yeah, I thought it was
Beautiful.
important to have the little details that are a little bit surprising in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I-
this is definitely surprising. Jan, this is
And-
definitely, I won't spoil anything, but this is great. This is great
it was
because,
Definitely Jan who said,
yeah,
I'm thinking a jar with snake, which of course she bought a jar.
I have it. I still have it.
Get it? Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I have a bunch of snakes here too.
Yeah, we were really getting into snakes, and then there, you know, there's also little creatures in the in the kelp too.
yeah.
But the thing is that in the story, that Marimi keeps an altar that's very secret to her,
Mhm.
and one of the things that she has in that altar is a jar with a snake in it, and even though it's a rubber snake, you know, when you put it on the altar, it's got, you know, it's got that vibe of having the spirit in it. So when you look into the altar, when you gaze at the altar, you feel the spirit of the things that you've put in the altar. It's a very interesting process, I have to say.
Mhm.
It's very cool. It's beautiful too.
Yeah, it really is.
Do you want to, while we're here, do you want to go ahead and look at the other book covers? And
Okay,
then
we can do that.
that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Mhm.
Aren't these all you two, Karen?
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
Look at
yeah.
Karen and Jan. I love it.
Yes.
Animals are huge in Jan's book. So this one has the bear and the cat.
Yeah.
Christine's
Yes.
cat.
Yay.
Yeah. Yeah, the cat Numi. He's a Maine Coon.
Maine
And he's a
Coon.
main character
Yeah.
in the book. And they're always, the chows are always in there, but Numi's in this book. And I did have a Maine Coon cat named Numi. So
Nice.
he's in the book. But the bear is a symbol in the book. And actually, you know, we were trying to figure out what kind of bear. In the beginning, we were just using, you know,
We had the pelt.
the bear pelt, because that's
okay.
what's in the book. The real bear shows up in the end as an ancestor of the older, or sorry, a descendant of the older bear. But anyway, it's the background too of Ghost is there is a ghost who is a character, and he is a great grandfather of a young character who fought in the Civil War, and his name is Zachariah. We call him Zach in the book, and he shows up periodically and talks to not only his grandson but also his grandson's uncle. And so he's a character in the book. That's why I called him Ghost. And you know, again, it takes place in the present time, but it uses a lot of sort of historical stuff and a sort of very vengeful character named Benjamin in that book. And that's a fairly complicated plot in Ghost, I must say. And it's one of the books that I didn't edit that much. And you know, I think that Carol would have had me edit more, but I said, you know what, Carol, this one I'm done with. And sometimes that's just the case.
Yeah.
You know, you're just done.
Yep.
So that's Ghost.
It's beautiful.
I wanted to say that, you know, because we knew that there was going to be one, more than one book, we had to think about a palette and a style that would go across the board. But when we did Ancestors, so that meant keeping it simple with one, with a limited palette, right?
Yeah.
And when we did ancestors, Dan said, "What if the eye was green?"
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It jumps out at you.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
we kind of do the eye thing following through, which I think is cool too.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very cool. It's
Yeah.
another little tie in those.
This
Yeah.
one,
It's,
a
yeah.
ghost went through a lot of variations.
It did.
It
It
started
did. Yeah, we did a lot.
a
We did a
lot
lot.
to, yeah.
This
so
reminds me of 80s horror film.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about this, Jan and Karen.
Well, Motherboard came. The plot came to me. We were on a vacation in New Mexico, and we were, I began to wonder about casinos, and how much of the revenue of the casinos actually goes to the tribes. And I started doing research, but also I got the idea of creating a character, a casino owner, a woman, an Apache casino owner. And that, by the way, that's Geronimo's skull. As
Nice.
best we could show it. And then you can see the little helicopters are
Yes, that's what I kept
skull
looking at.
size.
It's bigger on my other screen, and I was like, "These are helicopters."
Yeah. And there's
Cool.
a fox. There's a fox there, and he actually is a pet in the book named Zorro. But
three-legged.
anyway, the motherboard, I just created these characters larger than life. And with the idea that, well, you know what, if you can think of a certain character, it's got to exist out there. If you can imagine it, it's out there. So, and they're I had two casino owners. One is an Apache casino owner, and one is a Sioux, back, South Dakota casino owner. He's a very tough guy, and so I create this sort of love affair in the end between these two casino owners who are both in their 60s, and they're kind of getting tired of killing people and taking their money, and they sort of, and then there's a child in the book named Blossom, and she's 5 years old. Blossom's 5. And it turns out there is a murder in the beginning. It's Blossom's parents. She escapes. They're killed in a casino parking lot. I'm not going to give you all the reasons why. Blossom escapes and winds up being protected by social services, and then social services finds a relative of this child who has never known about her mother, her very proper mother, who had a love affair with an Apache and had a child. And it turns out, so when the book starts out, the main character, Claire, is getting a call from social services in Albuquerque saying, "We have your niece here and we need to bring her to you for safety reasons in San Francisco." So Blossom is has to be taken in by Claire Hamilton and her live-in boyfriend, Nelson Longstreet. So anyway, so it's a rollicking ride, I have to say. But I had more fun with Motherboard than I can tell you. I just let it fly out of my brain.
That's great.
I had a lot of fun with it.
It is great. I love that Jan incorporates little bits of real history. So for
Yes.
I got little bits to, research and go down the rabbit hole with. There is a big thing about where is Geronimo's skull right now? It's like at a university. And
well, some people think that there's a men's club at Yale. I forget what it's called. It's Skull and Bones, something like that. Yeah. It's very secret, and a lot of presidents belong, etc. And presumably, they may have Geronimo's skull, but that's a rumor. Yeah. I don't know. We talked about that, but no one knows where it is, and no one really knows where his body was buried.
Oh.
Yeah,
wow.
It's really unknown, but Geronimo became fascinating to me because I think he's incredibly misunderstood. and who he actually was. And it turns out, you know, again, as I did the research into the Apache people, Geronimo and his tribe. Well, you know, the tribes are all small families. They're when you say the Apaches, you're talking about, you know, 8 different families, and they were small in number. But Geronimo was the last Native American to surrender. And he did live out the rest of his life on a reservation as a farmer. And then but East Coast people were fascinated by Geronimo. So Teddy Roosevelt had him in his, you know, parade when he became president. And Geronimo was sitting next to him in the car. So Geronimo is a trickster. And I, you know, and in the book, so I talk a lot about him. And my main character, Motherboard, her name, we call her Mobo. Mobo, her hero is Geronimo. And it's not just Geronimo, but it was a woman who was in Geronimo's band, who was, you know, could fight and shoot and run as fast as any man. And do everything as good, named Lozen. And so she's you know, again, a ghost character in Ghost in Motherboard. So as you can see, I'm interested in ancestors in all my books.
So cool.
Yeah, and I remember, you know, in Ancestors, you know, and like you said, Karen, you know, you deal with a lot of social and political, you know, issues in your books, and I find that fascinating. And you know, like with the Nigerian, the rape of all the natural resources from Nigeria,
Oh
you
God,
know,
yeah,
all that stuff,
awful.
you know, and it really brings it to the forefront and creates a precedence for that to be acknowledged, you know. So I think that's really interesting that you do that. It's like I've told her this many times when I'll read it and I'll be like, I feel like I'm getting a history lesson for real.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
I did that a lot in Motherboard too. About, you know, I don't know how many treaties, but about 225 treaties were signed by Native tribes and the U.S. government, and not a single one was kept. Not a single one. And you know, the history of, you know, the predations of, you know, the Europeans, the manifest destiny, are you know, westward movement. I mean, the Native Americans who had lived here for thousands of years, it was, you know, they call it a clash of cultures. It was also a clash of inevitability.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. And, you know, it's not a pretty history. It
No.
is. And we have a lot to, you know, make up for. And I don't have any idea how that's ever going to happen, really. But anyway, I decided I wanted to write a book that brought in, you know, I love putting absolutely unlikely characters together in a situation that requires them to sort of survive. And that's certainly what happens in Motherboard. And this child is being hunted by, you know, not just several casino owners, but a cartel guy. And I mean, and nobody, and she's of course, you know, a delightful child who nobody can really understand. Why is everybody after this child?
Okay, I want to read it now. I want to read all of them.
So I, you know, again, with Motherboard, I just played. I have to say, I just played, and you know, I think Carol and I did. I don't think we did as much editing of Motherboard, but quite a lot. You know, again, I had hoped there would be less when I said, okay, let's start on Motherboard. No, Jan, there's quite a lot to do, and that's I guess that's a part of writing, which is, you know, the first part is just getting it out and, you know, getting a manuscript out, and then the real work begins.
Oh yeah.
What have I got here? You know, what have I actually done? And is this gonna is this really gonna fly? It's hard to know until you've started to really put it all together and have your readers tell you, okay, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So
And we're
Wow.
doing looters. You're doing, which we're going to come up on looters, I'm sure here. Looters is what we've been talking about in class with Carol in our class right now. So we've been going through looters
yeah.
with Jan as well. So tell us about looters, Jan.
Well, looters is it's sort of the same. Again, I think it was probably when I was writing Motherboard that I came across the level of looting of antiquities, and how again on all the Native American reservations, most of the sacred sites have been looted. I mean, over the years. Now there are laws and there are consequences, but it's still going on. And then I got interested in, the looting all over the world. And I decided, yeah, I want to write about that. So that's sort of the background of looters. Again, I start out with, all my books start out in Berkeley, California with my characters. And there's a psychotherapist, named Rebecca, and her mentor, Gertrude, who's in her 80s. And then Rebecca's husband, who is a professor of cultural anthropology at UC Berkeley. And I don't talk about Berkeley that much, but that's where they all live. And then they have a friend named Bear, who's been, a friend of Richard's since college. And he's part of, he's an ex, kind of CIA guy, special ops guy who's now a detective, and he comes in town. He's always part of the mix, and they all get together because the situation heats up where they're going to have to do something. I mean, they all become sort of amateur sleuths, but they, in their kind of amateur way, they get to the truth of things mostly where a police would not be able to do very much. And so anyway, with looters, I'm having, if I'm not having fun with it, it kind of, it doesn't fly, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you also have a lot of your female characters. I noticed that you really, really empower them.
I do.
They're really unsure of themselves in the
Right.
beginning because
That's
it might be societal constructs, how they're brought up, their own, insecurities about things. But then they end up finding their power and they become really strong and unshakable. And I think that's really, really great.
That's absolutely. And again, I think when I first started and created, Ancestors, I wasn't aware that all of my main characters are female, and all of them, you're right, have not found their power yet. But the plot and the circumstances is how they do develop. And certainly
Yep.
in Looters, we start out with a wife who's just adored her husband, who's disappeared, and everybody thinks he's dead, but Eleanor thinks he's alive, and slowly but surely becomes to realize who she was really married to.
Mhm.
And we're at a point now where she's going to go find him and have a reckoning. There's always a reckoning at the end.
Yes. There's always a
Awesome.
reckoning and atonement.
That's right. That's right.
So would you mind, Jan, if I pull up a slide that has all 4 books on it? Could you read us an excerpt from one?
Yeah, I will do that. And I'm always a little nervous about reading, but because it's not something I'm all that used to. But yes, I will. And I have.
Awesome.
Let me. I decided to read a piece from Motherboard, and this is a this is a scene, and there are a lot of scenes in Motherboard where things get very dangerous, and hopefully, whoever the character in the scene is, they learn something about themselves. And in this scene, it is the casino owner I mentioned, who is he is mixed race. He's Ogallala Lakota Sioux, and his mother was Sioux. His father was Sioux. His mother was white. And he has a friend named Wayne who is a Sioux, who lives on the reservation, and they've been together for years and years. And Jabba is a casino owner back in South Dakota, and he's an odd character. He's overweight. He loves to eat. He's quite vicious, and he's 63 now, and he's reached a point where he's getting kind of tired, and he wants his life to have more meaning. And eventually he's going to meet Blossom. But this is not the scene where he meets Blossom. What he has done is he has flown out to New Mexico, because that's where Blossom is with her aunt and uncle and the people around her who are, protecting her. And Jabba is after this kid because ultimately, the two people who work for Jabba, and he has lots of people who work for him, named Chester and Owen, were supposed to not only kill her parents because they took money from the casino, but the kid saw them, and the kid is Blossom. But Blossom doesn't remember. So she doesn't play a part in this scene, but Chester and Owen live in a home in New Mexico that, of course, Jabba owns, and they just take care of business out in New Mexico. And he's arrived with Wayne in their little plane where they fly all over the place. Jabba has his own plane, and they're going to do away with Chester and Owen. Jabba has decided they didn't get the job done, and it's time that they should disappear. However, Chester and Owen, who are kind of idiots, have also figured out that their time is up. So this is a scene about what happens. Chester and Owen pulled a sack over Jabba's head and marched him into the back of the sedan and drove for about an hour in silence, except for the sound of sucking on a marijuana joint. They pulled to a stop and got out. He could hear them arguing. The sweat poured down his front, and he assumed his shirt would be ruined. And that's Jabba, and he's he likes his shirts, just so you know that. He knew that the mind found little nonsensical things to focus on at the most traumatic moments. He remembered that when he stood over Wayne, buried up to his chest in the mud, when he was teaching him a lesson, Wayne complained that his mother was making her lamb shank stew that night, and he was going to miss it. Those words were prophetic, because it was in that moment that Jabba decided to make that guy his friend. He pulled him out of the mud hole, and both he and Wayne went for a swim and in the river and made it home to Wayne's that night, just in time for his mother's stew. And that was the first of many evenings Jabba had dinner at Wayne's house after that. In the middle of his reverie, he realized that he heard the sound of shovels. They're digging my grave, he surmised. As he listened to the rhythmic stab and thrust of the pebbled dirt, he realized they were digging a very deep and wide hole. I guess they don't want the buzzards to alert anyone that I have been newly laid in the ground. With that thought, he pushed his mind to wander some more in the hopes that it would delay the inevitable. So this is how it ends. Those two morons get to kill me and dump me in a hole in the middle of nowhere. Part of him just couldn't accept that. But the other part of him knew that life was a bit of a fucked up comedy at best. He couldn't shake the overriding conviction, despite the immediate evidence, that this is not how it ends. He wondered what Crazy Horse must have thought just before he was stabbed by some non-entity white military guard who thought he would make himself famous by killing the great chief who had never before been captured, the chief who wiped out Custer's whole platoon, making fools of them all. By invoking Crazy Horse, the question gained energy, and he heard himself say, "This is not my ending." He thought about the Crazy Horse monument that he loved to hate, and he knew that what his father wanted him to know most of all was that Crazy Horse lived on, not in the monument, but in people's minds. As his father came to mind, the connection between the current situation at hand and how he wanted to be remembered converged. His father's life had been largely a waste. Jabba had wanted his life to make up for that. Making money had been easy. He still wanted time to seriously consider the question of now what? He mulled that over. Now what? He became aware that the answer to that question coincided with the realization that the digging had stopped. He heard boots tromping through sandy soil. The bizarre thought that they were going to bury him in sand shot to the fore of his attention. He decided that they had dug for approximately an hour. They would toss his body in, and then he wondered how long it would take the desert night creatures to dig him out for food. The footsteps stopped, and he heard voices arguing again. Those two are like Cheech and Chong. Then footsteps started to return. He prepared himself, but still the overriding thought would not go away. It got louder. This is not how it's going to end. He heard the shots ring out. 2 shots, then complete silence. He cocked his head back and forth, straining to remove the sack over his head, but no matter what he did, he couldn't get it off. 5 minutes passed, an eternity. He tried to relax, breathe. He had to take a leak badly and realized even if this was to be the end, the embarrassment of peeing in his pants felt overwhelming. The footsteps became loud. Someone was stomping up to the car. The back door opened. He felt the relief of a little air. Something snatched off the blindfold. He blinked at the bright sunlight as he recognized Wayne's big grin from ear to ear. Jesus Christ! How did you find me then? I mean, what happened? Wayne helped him out of the back seat and cut off the plastic cuff with his pocket knife. Jabba moved as fast as he could for the nearest bush to relieve himself. Well, here's what happened. Wayne was speaking in a slow, normal voice, not a tone congruent with what had just happened. I had to come back to the house, forgot my wallet. I parked outside the fence so you all didn't see my Jeep, but I saw the 3 of you climbing into their sedan. And lo and behold, you were cuffed and blindfolded. Something's up, I say to myself. He pointed to his head. I surmised they intended to take you out and snuff you because they figured out that's exactly what we were going to do with them. Jabba stared, slowly comprehending. Why didn't you rescue me back at the house? Why put me through all this? Oh, Wayne looked surprised and then sighed. You told me to figure something out. So that's what I did. I figured I didn't particularly want to carry 2 bloody bodies in my Jeep, and I wasn't particularly in the mood to scope out the place, dig a big hole in this heat. So I let them do the work for us. Now, all we have to do is throw them in, cover them up, and drive their car and my Jeep back to the house. End of story. For once, Jabba had nothing to say. During the next half hour, he sat on a camp stool that Wayne provided from the Jeep. He drank a Heineken's from Wayne's cooler and basked in saying goodbye to the thought that was finally fading away. This is not how it ends.
That is so good.
Great, man.
Wow.
Demented and twisted. We love it.
Oh, it's
Well, their
fantastic.
relationship is kind of I play with it throughout. And, again, Wayne's always the one who's kept himself in shape. Java is not in shape. He's got high blood pressure, he's got high cholesterol, and he doesn't take care of himself. Wayne takes care of Java. So that's that scene. And Wayne is very much a traditionalist. He still lives on the reservation, and he stays in touch, close to his family, whereas Java kind of, he tries to understand it, but it's just not his thing.
Honestly, it sounds like you're having fun writing.
I had fun writing that scene.
Really.
Oh, I bet. Oh my gosh. So good. I'm just like, now I know I said before I want to read. Now I really want to.
Thanks.
So good.
Mm.
Wow.
You've done some other things, Jan, before you started really getting into writing. You've done some other creative endeavors like silkscreen,
Right.
things like that. And I think you brought some stuff that we're going to look at today. What do you think?
Yeah.
Not only is she an incredible author, she's an incredible artist as well.
Yes.
Well, this again, all the stuff that I was doing way back when, they're very whimsical. You can see that. And what the reason I wanted to talk about the art, the silkscreen, is I really do think, I know for me, I'm self-taught. I think being that way helps you find you're not living under a kind of bunch of rules. This is how you should write. This is how you should paint. This is how you should. So, and one of the things about the silk screening was it was manually. It took a lot of dexterity because I would cut out the stencils by hand. Each color is a different stencil, but learning how to make the colors blend into each other was really a trick. And the way I just saw, I was in a museum and I saw one of an artist named Falone who did silk screening, and he would do this blended colors. And I looked at the print and I said, oh, I think I can figure that out. So I went home and I figured it out. Then sort of at the end of my time of silk screening, I was beginning to think what next. I took a class in silk screening. It was a certain type of silk screening. Anyway, the teacher said her master students did not know how to do this kind of blending of colors. And I said, oh, I can do it. And she said, you're kidding. And she said, would you give us a demonstration? So I did. I mean, and it's not for everybody. I wouldn't tell everybody, oh, don't pay any attention to the rules. Just do your own thing. I don't particularly say that because it's not always the best way. But it's how I think you find, you find those moments when you just play and something works.
Yep.
And again, with the writing, it's kind of imagining these two goons out in the desert digging, and poor Java sitting in the car. And how am I gonna rescue Java? Because you can't die here. And oh yeah, Wayne, he's coming to the rescue, but he's late in the day, and he doesn't want to dig the hole. Let them dig the hole, and then I'll just get them, and we'll throw them in.
So good.
So
I think that invites a lot of, Jan, for the inclusion of, people, like me, I had dyslexia. I never learned conventionally.
Yeah.
And a lot of,
yeah,
when you are on the outside of that and looking in, especially when you're younger, you feel like maybe you're not smart enough, or maybe you're just not getting it.
I know.
No, you just take a different approach, and learning how to be self-taught really opens up a lot of things that works for you and how you see things and how you work. And I think that gives hope for people that don't fall into, again, the social constructs of how things should be.
I agree.
And it gives hope to people that had a little harder time, but are still brilliant artists, brilliant.
Oh, I know.
People, brilliant spirit.
I know.
So,
I think so. I really believe that.
Yeah.
And so I encourage people, oh, don't worry about, in our head, we're always kind of editing. And I've told people who want to write, don't edit, just write
Just
it.
get it down.
Don't
Yep.
edit. And because
It's
that's
hard not to. I've tried.
it's very hard. It's very hard not
It'll
to.
slow you down.
It will so
It does.
much.
Well, and not just slow you down, it'll stop you.
That's true
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
It'll stop you. And that's what you don't want. So interestingly, with the silk screening, I just taught myself and I had fun with it. And, the reason I really stopped doing it, the cleanup, you're working with oil-based inks and the cleanup is really toxic. And,
Oh yeah.
and I thought, well, and I thought I done what I'd done. I didn't feel like doing any more. So but you can see I loved color.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. I mean,
Great.
and you were talking about the gradation in it. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
To realize that silk screen.
Yeah. And that's 4 colors, actually. I think it's 4 colors. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
I've not seen this one. It's quite wonderful.
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I played a lot. I love that one.
Symbols.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. That, we had taken a trip to Baja, California. And, down in there, I forget what these trees are called, but you see a lot of them and you see the little missions. And I don't know. So it just came to me as a piece of that landscape. Yeah.
It's
Fantastic.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. That's the same idea. Yeah. The same idea.
Oh, Akatia.
Yeah. That's what it is. I love them. They're
Yes.
so lovely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the pattern.
Yeah.
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 I love these because you look and then as you look, you see more and more and more.
Yeah.
But the colors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My favorite's coming up. I like all of them. My favorite's coming. I know it is. Where is it? Not yet. But it's
This
coming.
is beautiful. I
Yeah.
love the colors in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just playing with color, and literally, I just wanted to do something, and I sort of made it a cityscape. But it was mainly, with squares and
Oh,
angles.
it works.
To play with that. Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
You said this was a partial?
Oh.
I don't remember. I did that. I don't remember. But again, that's intended to be kind of a feeling of the landscape.
Yeah.
I like the desert a lot. We've often visited the desert, and I think that was kind of inspired by that.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. 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 I love poppies. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just decided to do poppies.
They're so pretty. Oh my gosh. When you sent us this
There it
one's
is.
just,
There
blows
it
me
is.
away.
This one's my favorite. I like all of them, Jan, but this one.
This is a lot of people's favorite.
Oh my God.
It's very.
It's
Yeah.
just like I'm
So
walking
eye-catching.
through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's just so eye-catching. It just, grabs you.
Mhm. Yeah.
I feel like I'm walking barefoot through it, almost like I can see myself walking through it,
Yeah.
towards it, and
Really?
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Thank you.
So on this particular one, what was your big inspiration for it?
Well, it's obviously a sunset, and again, I'm pretty sure, it's deserty, and the sort of, I always think about the desert as we tend to think it's deserted, but it's not. Deserts are very alive, and that's why I like them. I don't know, and Larry and I both share that. So we have spent a lot of time in the desert, and that's where that came from, sort of trying to bring alive, if you look more closely, what you think you don't see, then you begin to see. And that's what I think what I had in mind when I was doing this, was to bring the texture of the ground alive.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
It's like you
You
could
did,
almost,
and
yeah. Go ahead, Pam, sorry.
no, you're good. What's on top of that? When you look at the colors that you used, like you go into the green and into the blue and then into the horizon.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, and
just,
again, it
it's
was
just
all just intuitive, just playing around. And again, that's why I really love to share that with people who want to do something. I just do it. Kind of jump in and let yourself, run with it, which I think is hard for a lot of people, because you think, okay, I need the training and I need this.
Right,
No, you don't. You don't.
right.
And I think those of us who write like we do in Carol's group, we're all self-taught. Nobody's got the MFA thingy.
Nope.
But I think we're all original writers.
Yeah,
And
that's what I thought, just having an undergrad degree. I'm like, I'm never going to be able to, but yeah, I am. And, I wanted to talk real quick before we, start wrapping up. Leslie Finnenberg, trans male author. He's no longer with us,
Okay.
but, he didn't make it through high school, had all kinds of learning disabilities, this, that, and this, but spent so much time in the library and so much time in political movements and social movements, and really educated himself, and fought for, LGBTQ, trans people's rights, and fought for people's rights, and knew what he was talking about. And, and he would always say, I felt like I wasn't smart enough, but I self-taught myself everything. Brilliant.
Yeah,
Brilliant person.
Val, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I tell you, I read about people all the time where that's exactly it.
Mhm.
They school wasn't their thing. It wasn't my thing either.
Wasn't mine
I
either.
went to good schools, but I didn't learn most of what I learned in school. I've learned it on my own. And
Mhm.
now the writing, it just takes you all over the place, because we look up stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I've learned a lot. Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
So Jan, tell us, let me pull this one site or this one slide back up that shows us your website and everything. And is this the best way to get a hold of you if anyone's interested in doing so? And where
Yeah.
can we find your books?
Well, they're all on Amazon right now. And yeah, they are. So that's easy to get them. You can get them on my website, but frankly, I think just go to Amazon and get them.
Ancestors is on Audible.
Yeah, and yes, it is on Audible. And she's a new reader. She hadn't had a lot of experience, but we loved her voice. So
very cool.
Are you on Goodreads, Jan?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so Goodreads, Amazon.
Yeah.
Probably.
And if you're listening, her website is JanCThorpe, THORPE.com.
Yeah.
This is so fun. What's incredible is the fact that we came together to talk about writing and art and to interview others, artists and other authors and things. But look at the incredible talent just right here in our little group. I'm blown away.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am blown away. And Karen, your book covers are just beautiful.
Well, Jan and I we really work together well.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
you can
do.
tell.
Yeah.
Well, that's lucky that you can work together well, because there's some people you don't work together well.
I know. And yeah, and we had we had a lot of fun. A lot of it's just I remember when I said to Karen, we were going to do a logo, and I said, oh, I can't do an owl logo. Everybody's got an owl. And Karen said, yes, you can. Yes, you can. So
Absolutely.
we did an owl.
Yes, we
That's
did.
fun. So
Mhm.
cool.
Mhm.
Cool.
You know, It would be fun to put all our covers from our first thinking to the
Right.
final.
Show where,
Ooh,
show
yeah.
the
Oh,
evolution
you
of,
should.
right, right.
Because Ghost would be a really good one.
Well, we went, Karen, when we do you, let's do covers, and maybe we could
Okay.
do, that could be part of the presentation, because I think that's what people need to see is that, you know, as an author, you can really be part of creating the cover. So that when
Yeah.
I said, Karen, when I look at the cover, I want to love it. And, I have to love it.
You
Yeah.
have to
And
love
so I will say, I love this cover. And I remember,
It's
we
incredible.
were thinking about the helicopters and the eyes, but I just love it in the eye sockets.
I do too. And
Yeah.
the process I love the process too.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But I love what
Yay.
you said about being self-taught because, I always start with a pencil and a pad of paper. But when I remember not knowing the computer very well and being shown you can do this and this and this, but
Right.
nothing made
Yeah.
sense.
And it doesn't like register in your
on.
head. I'm sitting there going, yep, that's nice. And I've zoned out the minute you walked over and started.
But,
Yeah.
but
This
only
doesn't
when
resonate,
you
with
start doing it. So I love crafts.
Yeah.
Practice. Everything is practice, right?
It is.
Everything's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I like to think we break the
100%.
rules the most. We'll follow a recipe the first time, but watch,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So cool. Yay.
All right, everybody. I think that's all the time we have for today.
Well, thank you,
It
you guys.
is. Jan, this was
Jen,
incredible.
thank you.